The McShin Foundation is Virginia's leading peer-to-peer recovery community organization. So if you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, let us get you connected. Build your self-esteem and lead you to a solid foundation in your recovery. Check us out.
So my name is Jan. I'm a woman in long-term recovery, and it means I haven't used drugs or alcohol for 11,664 days. So God willing, I will celebrate 32 years of recovery on January 1st of this coming year. So yes, thank you. And it's funny because Honesty told everybody else what to talk about. She didn't give me a topic, but so I was like, dynamic addiction solution is a really big subject for 8 minutes long. So what I did was I asked to go later so that I could hear what some of the people, what you all were talking about. For me, what recovery means is that I am now the founder and executive director of SpiritWorks, which is a recovery community organization that's here in Williamsburg, as well as now in Warrenton. It has also, as John and both Honesty mentioned, I am an ordained deacon in the Episcopal Church. So I can marry you, bury you, baptize you, and celebrate all kinds of milestones with you. I am also now the executive director of Faces and Voices. No, I'm not. I am the chairperson, please don't let me get that wrong, of Faces and Voices of Recovery, which is the national advocacy organization. And what we do is we like to put a face and a voice on recovery. So a lot of what we're doing tonight, what you all are talking about tonight, is the solution. I mean, we are the solution. One of the things that I'd have to say makes me mad is that people go everywhere except for to us for the solution, right? And so part of why we learn how to identify ourselves as we are so-and-so and we are people in recovery, because when I used to introduce myself and I'd say my name is Jan and I'm an addict, people stopped paying attention, because everybody has an idea of what they think an addict is. But when I say my name is Jan and I'm a woman in long-term recovery, they clap for me, right? Because what do I know? I know what the solution is, right? Because I'm a living proof that we do indeed recover. And so more than anything else, that's what we need to leave here with tonight, is the recognition that each and every one of us is the solution. We're the dynamic addiction solution, if you really want to break it all the way down. The other piece that when I've been thinking about my preparation for talking for a few minutes is the recognition that recovery, just like our addiction is progressive, recovery is progressive, right? So when I got to this thing called recovery, I would have sold myself short if I got what I thought I wanted, right? I didn't want to use anymore, I didn't want to die, I didn't want to hurt my family, and I didn't want to go to jail. That's what I wanted 32 years ago. That's not, you know, those aren't the things that I'm focused on anymore today. So I think one of the messages is to begin for us to learn, well, what are those different milestones? What are the different things that happen? In year 1 of recovery, the things that I was doing didn't look anything like I'm doing in year 31. It didn't look like year 2, year 5, year 10. And so the hope is that just like we progress down this horrible pathway in terms of our active addiction, we're going to continue to progress, because our brains are going to start healing and they're going to keep on healing. And so that the things that you're doing while you're maybe in a residential program are going to be really different. And you heard those stories all as we've been sitting here tonight, right? So being able to get my driver's license, being able to pay my fines, being able to be a mom or be a dad, those are the things that we have to look forward to. Those are the things that'll happen. And those are the stories like Jenny just talked about. Those are the stories that people need to hear, right? We share our experience, strength, and hope if we're in 12-step rooms. Equally, what people want to hear from us is our experience, strength, and hope. What it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. That's what changes lives. That's what changes people when they hear those stories of hope and healing. That's what matters. You know, what mostly we hear stories about, what do we hear on the news? What do we see on the news? Is the people who continue to mess up their lives and continue to hurt themselves and to hurt their families and to hurt their communities. And so we need to be able to find a way to lift our voices and show our faces and let people know that recovery ought to be, right? At SpiritWorks, we believe that recovery is the expectation. I have the good fortune of working with clergy people, with physicians, with attorneys, And for those groups of people with college students, 78% of those people are able to eventually sustain long-term recovery. You know, why isn't that the expectation for everybody? Because in our society, sadly, we put more value on certain people's lives than we do on other people's lives. And that's just the truth. And so one of the things, I've had the good fortune of starting to work in the jail system and to really begin to learn that without people who are coming out of the criminal justice system, we're never going to turn this tide around, right? And so one of the things that we've started doing is to look at, yes, collegiate recovery is important. Yes, recovery community organizations are important. Recovery housing is important. All of those things are important, but so is the large population of people that are coming out of the criminal justice system. And you all talked about that tonight, right? That's the population that's missing. And there are programs. There's a HEART program. There's a 24/7 program. You know, what's the difference between some of these other organizations and these other individuals who are being more successful is that people are paying attention to them for longer, right? So if you're an airline pilot, they're going to pay attention to you for 5 years, right? They're going to make sure that all of your needs are met for that period of time. If you're an attorney, it's a couple years. If you're a physician, it's 5 years. If you're a college student, it's the time that you're in college, right? They're going to pay attention to you. And so part of the hope now is to start paying attention to people as they're coming out of the criminal justice system, focusing on recovery, not on criminality, and not holding up that we're going to throw you back in jail if you don't do what we want you to do. Those things don't work, because if they did, none of us would have to do it over and over again. So the good news, one of the things we're starting to work on in other areas and in other states, they have what's called one recovery community organization that's a statewide organization. We don't have that in Virginia. We had the wisdom of John Shinholzer, who started McShin in 2004. I started SpiritWorks in 2005. We've got the Sarah Center. We've got lots of them that have popped up in Virginia. And so what that's meant in the larger nation is that they can overlook us because we don't have one voice in Virginia. We have lots of us who are speaking mostly the same thing, but they still don't have to pay attention to us because we're not unified. And so what we've started doing, we've talked about it for years, and we've come up with this idea of creating Faces and Voices of Recovery Virginia. And so that way that we are now going to be a force that can be reckoned with. We don't always agree on everything. My buddies are in the front row with me. We fight like children, like sisters and brothers, and we're always going to do that. We're always also going to present a public face where we do rise to the occasion and we can agree on things. And those are the things that we're going to advocate for. We're going to help Ginny, and we're going to help the Chris Atwood Foundation. We're going to help McShin put forward the things that they want to do. And we're always going to do those things because, again, we are the solution and we have the answers. And so by creating this Faces and Voices of Recovery Virginia, one of our first initiatives, we have the ear of a delegate from Northern Virginia who's excited about creating a license plate, right? So that, God willing, will be the license plate that's developed. We're looking at getting our signatures. You know, I drive around all the time and I see a license plate for everybody else, but I don't see a license plate for me. The other thing that's happening in Virginia is there's all this money that we talk about, and we hear this coming into Virginia, right? $9.6 million and all the rest of that stuff. And most of the recovery community organizations, recovery housing, you probably haven't seen much of it anyway. None of us are seeing it. Where's this money going? Sometimes it trickles out. Sometimes, this is horrible, I'm going to be on TV, but I'm going to say it anyway. So sometimes it trickles out, but then oftentimes a little bit will trickle down, and then they'll make us fight over it, right? And so I'll have to say bad things about John or about David in order to get money. But I don't want to do that. Right? So we're not willing to do those things to each other. And so it means that we often get left out. Right? So they put out enough money to make it interesting that other people who really aren't folks whose organizations lead with addiction and lead with recovery, because it's the amount of money and it gets exciting and they want some too, so all of a sudden they do the same thing that we do, even though they really don't, right? Because they want access to those same resources. So what our license plate fund is going to allow us to do is to create a pot of money that nobody can touch, right? It's only for people in recovery. There's no way that once all of this stuff goes through, that anybody will be able to do anything with it except for those of us who are in recovery. I got 2 minutes, I got you. And that'll be a neat thing. What will be hard is when you get big heads like John's and mine and David and others together in a room and decide what projects we're going to work on or what we're going to fund with it. But what we do know, and what we will know about that is that it's going to only be geared for helping us, and that nobody can take that away from us. You know, one of my long-term goals is that when anything comes up that has something to do with recovery, that instead of going to a treatment person or to a legislator, that they're going to come to somebody in this room. It might not be me, it might not be John, it might not be Honesty, but it's going to be one of us. Because, you know, what have I said 3 times? We are the solution, right? That's the solution for dynamic addiction, is those of us who sit in this room as individuals in recovery, family members, friends, and allies who are part of the solution. So, thank you.